Hey everyone, I'm back. I've been making documentaries over on the main channel, just posted an episode on the Nika riots, so that's what's been taking up my time. But now that that is out, I can get back to doing some gaming content over on this channel. So today we'll be talking about Thrones of Britannia. There's some new information that has come out, two trailers. One is going to be on the Gaelic factions, and then the other one is going to be on the Welsh factions. And then on top of that, CA has also come out with a blog post here talking about a new mechanic, about the fame mechanic. It's a victory condition. So real briefly, we'll talk kind of history and then we'll take a look at the trailers. So when you're talking about these two kingdoms, when you want to talk about, let's start with the Gaelic Kingdoms here in Ireland. Essentially what happens during this period is that Ireland is made up of a bunch of disputing factions and local rulers and chieftains, not super developed in the sense of, Wessex, for instance, having a big stabilized kingdom that's able to establish a large power base. In Ireland, it's much less developed in that sense. A lot of petty warbands and rulers rating about kind of more low-level development in that sense, and that's mostly owed to the fact that the Romans didn't really make that much of an impact here, whereas in the East you have a lot more of the Roman infrastructure, the roads, the political hierarchy and all the stuff that they had set up, and later the church, that allows these areas to be more developed, whereas in Ireland you don't quite see those same effects. So it's a little bit slower in terms of progress, but nonetheless Ireland still has a lot of these monasteries that crop up, and these end up being big intellectual centers. So actually pretty strong in the sense of how influential those monasteries were. But what you have essentially in this area, like I said, is a little bit less developed, lots of little kingdoms, and this is a great area for the Vikings to come in. So when the Vikings do attack the British Isles, not only are they going to be raiding, up and down the eastern side of the British Isles, but they come over to the north and they come into Ireland. This is going to be a major area that the Vikings are going to establish themselves, especially in Dublin. It starts off as a fortified position, I believe a fortified camp at the mouth of a river, and it later develops into Market Town, and eventually a pretty big strong point that the Vikings are going to use as they settle. So you have Norwegians in this area, and they're going to use this area to collect a lot of slaves. This is something that's very important when it comes to the money Vikings made. They were huge in the slave trade, and all the slaves that they were able to get from, not only Ireland, but then also in their other conquests would be fed into the Islamic world, which had a lot of these big cities and industrial centers that needed a lot of labor. So the Vikings are going to be in here getting a lot done with raiding. Not too much in terms of, great gold and wealth to be gained outside of the monasteries here. So they're going to be trading mostly in slaves, operating out of Dublin here. I call it Difflin, I guess, in the old name. And then later you actually have the Norse, other foreigners who come in, and the Norse and the Norwegians, the Danes and the Norwegians are going to fight in a massive sea battle to establish who has the rights to raid and collect slaves, I should say. So this is going to be an important area. So the Vikings featuring prominently. You have a bunch of minor kings here who can't necessarily hold up straight against the Vikings, but they're really good when it comes to ambushing in the bogs and forests of Ireland. And so what ends up happening is these kings might try and get the support of the foreigners in their bid to get a bit more powerful. And with that introduction, we can go ahead and watch the trailer for some context. This is going to be the Gaelic Cinematic trailer. It talks about Flancina, and it's told in an interesting kind of perspective. So the trailer opens up with a man running through the forest covered in snow, with essentially flashbacks to some sort of violent encounter. And he's looking over his shoulder. He kind of trips, falls, passes out, and then he's picked up by some compatriots of his, so a local army or war band. They find him and they essentially raise him up and they ask him, "Hey, what happened?" And then he spins the tale of these attacks that happened, led by Flancina himself. And what they mention is this is going to be Flancina right there, so very aggressive as portrayed in this trailer. And he's actually going to be one of the few who's able to be the High King of Ireland. And what they show here actually is going to be some of the Viking ships coming in. So those guys do play pretty prominently, as I said, in Ireland itself, and they were used, by local kings in conjunction with them to try and seize power. So a bit of some of the local kings would rail against these foreigners, but then often they would have to ally with them in order to expand their power base. So that's one of the things that you're seeing alluded to in this trailer. And here you can see it zooming in on the territory of Ireland, and then Flancina here mercilessly cutting through others in order to establish his reign. He yells at the camera there. And so now what you have, if we go back to the map here, Flancina from Mide using the Vikings, I guess, in alliance to attack the nearby kingdoms, and then trying to establish himself as the High King of Ireland. It's a title that he was able to claim, and it's something that you would see cropping out throughout history, people trying to ascend to the High King of Ireland title. many weren't really able to do that in the sense that they couldn't get full control of Ireland, not for quite some time, but it's nonetheless a title that you do see recurring in history. The next trailer is going to be talking about the Welsh. So going to be talking about this area here, and as you can see, it's broken up into a bunch of these little factions. I'm not great on the pronunciation: Gwynd, Powys, Gwent, etc. All of these. And basically what ends up happening is when you have the local Britons in here, and then the Romans who come in and conquer this area. So the Romans, there's the Romano-Britons, but eventually what ends up happening is later when the Roman legions withdraw, and then the Angles, the Jutes, and other people come in, and they start to take over this area and create, the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. It's thought, and I believe it's been proved through genealogy, that the area of, the Welsh territories ends up being the displaced Romano-Britons who seek this area. So that's kind of the descent that they have. And so these territories do have kind of, I believe, ancestral memory of the King Arthur, the Romano-Briton leader who was trying to fight against the invasion or the incoming Anglo-Saxons, or the incoming Angles, etc., who would become the Anglo-Saxons. So, King Arthur holding off against those would have been, I believe, still in the ancestral memory of these people who were displaced, and so they still have that. But anyways, you have them in this area here, butted up against Mercia, and this is where you have, I believe, Offa's Dyke that had to be built because there's a lot of raiding back and forth across the territory, and when Offa claims the throne of Mercia, he has to create a huge dike going across this whole area, because that's just how intensive the warfare was on the frontier here. But still, this whole area, just like Ireland, is a little bit fractional in terms of the kingdoms. Yes, there is this allusion to the High King of both Ireland and the High King of the Welsh or Wales. But even though it exists, no one really is able to claim that title for too long, and so it's just something you kind of aspire to. But anyways, with that being said, we can go ahead and watch the trailer for the Welsh Cinematic. And people have pointed out that this one is a bit interesting as well, just like the last one has someone stumbling into camp, and it's a bit of a flashback and told from someone else's perspective. This one is going to be different. It's going to be talk about here we zoom in on the Welsh kingdoms, and it's going to be talking about essentially the sons of a powerful king, a king who was able to claim, I believe, the title of the High King. And essentially, this trailer is going to be told from the perspective of his sons. I believe this character is supposed to be King Anarut. And essentially, what the trailer is telling you is that at this point in time, you have the sons of this great king, and all of these sons are going to be dividing the kingdom amongst themselves, internal civil war. They're all trying to seek their own power base, and they're not really doing much to consolidate the title. And so that is the backdrop here, and I think that's pretty historically accurate. If you're talking about these kingdoms, here you can see the sons fighting against each other. But yeah, a lot of these kingdoms not really have much in the way of unity, and that is the prize that CA is kind of dangling in front of you. The intention behind you is to unite these warring factions within your kingdom, create a unified front, and from there forge a unified kingdom, push out and make a name for yourself. So the son Anarut here is going to be the one that they want you to do that with. So there you can see he has a map, and then here he's going to be talking to his father, who was I believe the High King at this point in time. And his father gives him that, I don't know if it's a land deed or a paper of succession, but essentially now he's going to rise to the top, and he's going to be trying to take command of his lands. He's strolling through, and he's having a rise to power. So he is trying to rise above the factitious internal struggles of his kingdom, and now he's going to look out kind of longingly at the territory in front of him and make great plans for what he can do to improve his kingdom. So that is it for the trailer. A little bit of a different take, where we're not talking about war bands or raiding. It's more about making your kingdom great. And so in this case, this kind of pairs together with the Thrones of Britannia fame mechanic. And so the post talks about the new fame mechanic, and essentially what it is this is a new way to win the game. So the fame mechanic is essentially something that you can kind of tick up and earn points on over time. And fame is for those who want to develop their faction rather than conquer and paint the map. So going after fame allows you to turtle up, as they say here. And the victory condition ties nicely to that. You will get more fame the more high-level buildings and technologies you have. These will give you bonuses and it'll take you closer to a fame victory. And in the trailer, they talk about King Anarut here, who lays out his plan for developing Gwynd into a grand and prestigious kingdom. The Welsh factions are, in fact, especially well placed to take advantage of the fame condition. They possess a unique faction mechanic called Heroism, which can provide bonuses to their faction leader's influence. This can then provide a fame bonus for itself. So not only do you have, specific stuff that makes the Welsh predisposed to this, but then they also talk about building chains as well. So similarly, the starting capitals of Gwynd and Strathclyde can both construct special barred building chains, so new building chains that feed directly into fame, so propaganda through the tales that they sing. This can deliver big fame bonuses as well. Guvan, the Strathclyde capital, also offers the further advantage of a unique hogback building chain, which gives fame bonuses. So here they're going to be talking about Strathclyde, which is going to be an area a bit to the north, I believe. Yeah. So various kingdoms are going to have maybe be a bit more predisposed to go after the fame conditions. So they do talk about that there. And there are other unique building chains dotted across the map that also give fame bonuses. There are also various chains dedicated to different saints. Saint David, located in Benevia. Therefore, you're aiming for a fame victory. You want to seek out and target these settlements that contain these chains. They hold the power to make you famous. So that's kind of interesting. Just like in the race for the Vortex, where you have these ritual sites that you want to conquer in order to kind of keep your progression. It seems like they're kind of using a little bit of that, where you have special building chains that you want to take over in order to unlock their special buildings and further your quest for fame. So I like this, giving you different options. It's not just a mechanic where you have to turtle, but when you do expand, it gives you opportunities to expand in strategic ways to get more fame. Fame can also be advanced in technology too. Look for technologies with civic sections that deliver increased fame. Unlocks the leadership tech line for upgrading your law buildings, etc., etc., etc. So overall, I'm really liking the different trailers, introducing different kind of flavors for the factions, and then also different win conditions with fame. And they say other victories are sure to come. Some of them, I believe, are going to be just, paint the map your color, which we've been used to. But then another one is probably going to be tied to getting your particular Throne of Britannia linear narrative, I think, complete. So probably that's another one that they'll be talking about. But that's it for my recap. Hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.